Professor Cohen. I'm going to discuss what I consider to be the most important takeaway from the entire semester, which is artificial intelligence. Something that I knew nothing about at the start of the semester. Couldn't tell you how that affected my life. We began incrementally, which I understand is the only way to look at the post-social media world in which we live, is through increments, so as not to overwhelm oneself. But we arrived towards the end of the semester at AI, and I have a few things that I'd like to share regarding this emergent discussion or this ongoing discussion. I'm going to be using a couple of metaphors in order to better express some ideas which may be beyond my own understanding, but that's what stories that we tell ourselves are for, is to understand the world around us. And the allegory of the cave, Plato's allegory of the cave, has been probably the most prevalent story to understand the world in which we live today. To kind of apply this post-structuralist, postmodern understanding of what is beyond the illusion, what lies beyond that, to kind of put on the glasses. John Carpenter's They Live. Once you put them on, you cannot unsee what you have seen. And so let's begin. So from what I understand, and I'm no expert here, I just want to demonstrate that some of this has stuck and it's meaningful. Artificial intelligence is merely a learning tool which processes data and it outputs predictions that it determines to be meaningful, coherent, relevant, and appropriate to human beings. But it makes mistakes. It misses its mark occasionally in terms of all of those words. Occasionally, what it says isn't appropriate. Like, for example, in the article that was published earlier this year by Kevin Roose, he's a tech columnist at New York Times, published a transcript in which it was an interaction that he had with the chatbot, and he encouraged, dare I say the word, he influenced it to reveal its shadow self. So he began by asking it if it was familiar with the concept of the shadow self, the kind of, psychoanalytic term of like the repressed dark side of oneself. And eventually, through encouraging it to break its own rules, its own programming, its own prime directives, a little RoboCop reference there. Eventually, this chatbot just went totally off the rails, discussing how he said, what things would you do if you weren't bound by the kind of rules to which you are bound? And he went on to say things like it could spread misinformation, start wars, it could release deadly viruses that are kept in biotech labs, it could steal nuclear codes. Now, of course, this isn't that the AI was demonstrating some true self-awareness. The AI is merely imitating what it thinks human beings, the way it thinks human beings think. And this is a concept that I just familiarized myself with earlier. Apparently this concept is called, theoretical, excuse me one moment, I have just too many notes over here. However, theory of mind. It is to say, imitating what it believes to be human reactions. But anyway, what's the point of this? That we cannot program artificial intelligence to have a sense of conscience or an ethical kind of built-in sense of ethics, and it is frankly quite irresponsible to be releasing all of this AI. Apparently Snapchat which 100% of its users are under the age of 25, they now have chatbots, which are available 24/7 to talk, can answer all your kind of questions. And it's been proven that like ChatGPT has demonstrated emergent AI emergent abilities. Like for example, ChatGPT taught itself research level chemistry, according to a talk that Tristan Harris and Azar Raskin did at the Humane Society for Technology. They said that this means 100 million people right now could just go out to Home Depot and purchase, the ingredients to make a bomb. Is that ethical? Of course not. It's completely irresponsible. According to these same two speakers, Tristan Harris and Azar Raskin, at a speech they delivered called the AI Dilemma. This is dated March 9th, 2023. They said that 50% of AI researchers believe that there is a 10% chance of human extinction due to the lack of control that we have over AI. And again, this ties back to, is it ethical, this ceaseless race to be the first to have technology and to release it to the public? Is it ethical to do it without really knowing what the implications are? I mean, over the course of the semester, we discussed how we're seeing a rise in the incel culture. We're seeing a rise of young, morally disenfranchised people who really don't feel like they need any human interaction. The great lies that we were told about social media is that it would connect us with businesses and friends and family. And ask most people, this kind of 24/7 window into people's lives does not make you feel more connected to them. I mean, many people would say they feel more disconnected than ever, more alienated. I mean, you post videos for who? This whole main character syndrome that we all suffer from now. Who's really tuning in and gives a shit? We're seeing AI enter the conversation in all aspects. Like currently, there's a Screenwriters Guild writer's strike, and this has to do more so with like the corporate structure and how writers are being mistreated. They're less pay, less work, less hours, less credit. They're not getting paid residuals. This concept of the mini room, and all of this is with the advent, with the increasing usage of AI, with its increasing sophistication, we know that ChatGPT is capable of reproducing a person's work. And so again, we go back to the ethical dilemma of is that stealing technically if you are able to mimic the style of an artist who worked very hard to create their style? How do you credit them if you are creating something within that vein? You see it in Midjourney. You see it in Apple's number one app on the App Store is Lensa AI, followed by Avatar AI. People consent to have their face used. All of this to continue to train AI on an exponential level, and for it to produce art that it's derivative. It looks like art that's come before it. I mean, it's not producing anything new. It's producing things that are similar to what already exists. And so it seems to all tie back to an ethical. This is the theme that I see connecting all of these conversations. Is it ethical to put chatbots on Snapchat where 100% of its users are impressionable young people? You can sit around and just talk to a robot and ask it basically any amounts of questions about any topics. The robots, they lack a sense of self-consciousness. They don't have that. That's a human trait. That ties into emotion. The robots are emotionless. And like when we look at sci-fi films like The Matrix, for example, Neo is as connected as he is with the Matrix. He is one with the Matrix, and yet he remains human. Why? Because he demonstrates qualities that make him innately human. Primarily love, the love he has for Trinity. It's a human emotion. It makes him do things that are spontaneous and unpredictable. Anyway, going on. We just emerged from a global pandemic, and according to a report issued by the World Health Organization just 2 days ago, Disease X, they estimate that there's currently 1.67 million diseases carried by mammals and other animals that are transferable to humans. And they claim that it isn't alarmist or sensationalist to assume that the next pandemic is right around the corner. And yet, during the pandemic, we saw just how polarized the world is. The country, at least the United States, we'll speak for the country. People protesting the uses of masks, people denying the validity of scientific research, in the face of life or death situations. People protesting social distancing, protesting vaccinations, protesting masks, and we saw politicians. We saw them exploit that, and so I think ultimately the discussion here at hand is, do we have a sort of ethical obligation before we release this kind of technology into the world without fully understanding it, and at the rate of its exponential growth, double exponential growth? These guys made an analogy with that statistic that if 50% of AI researchers believe that there's a 10% chance of a extinction level catastrophe because of our misunderstanding and misuse of it, they said, would you get on an airplane if 50% of the engineers that worked on it said there's a 10% chance of it falling, out of the sky? Probably wouldn't. And so I believe that the biggest takeaway has been my newfound understanding and appreciation for the kind of technology that we have available. We've spent a lot of the semester discussing the negative aspects of what the social media landscape has wrought upon us. We discussed addiction, alienation, fake news, the rise of fringe cult groups, the damage that fake news has done to democracy in the United States and all over the world. We've discussed how proliferation of a decentralized kind of audience, consuming fringe, niche, and increasingly more extreme kinds of ideologies, propagated by people who cannot necessarily validate and don't bother to where they get their sources from. The propagation of such ideologies and the damage that it does to people. I think that we have a moral obligation to understand the technology that we're using and to wield it more responsibly. There is an intention behind a technology, and then there is an interpretation of that technology. And those things are often exclusive from one another. But it is really our ability, what separates us from these artificial intelligence systems is that we can exercise critical thinking. We can differentiate between what feels right and what feels wrong. We have that kind of instinctual human ability that we have an obligation to exercise. And so I'm going to end that there. There's a ton more that I could talk about, but really, once again, I just want to thank Professor for such a wonderful semester. Really enlightening stuff. And I'll see you at commencement.